Welcome to Call Frost First, Illinois Injury Law.
Welcome back to Call Frost First, Illinois Injury Law with Kevin J. Frost. Kevin is the managing partner of Clark Frost Zucchi and a trial attorney representing injured individuals and families across Northern Illinois. He has secured multi-million-dollar settlements and verdicts in cases involving serious auto accidents, truck crashes, wrongful death, and complex injury claims. I'm Leanne Lyon, and today we're talking about uninsured and underinsured motorist claims in Illinois and what options may be available after a serious accident. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, how are you today?
So happy to be here with you. Kevin, in Illinois, what is the difference between an uninsured motorist claim and an underinsured motorist claim?
Sure. An uninsured motorist claim was when you were involved in a collision and the at-fault driver has no insurance, so they're uninsured. And hopefully your policy has provisions that give you protection. You've bought coverage that in the case that you are involved in a motor vehicle collision with a quote-unquote uninsured driver. An underinsured motorist claim is when you are in an accident, a collision with an at-fault driver, and that at-fault driver doesn't have the adequate limits to cover your claim. Now, with the caveat meaning that you have to have better coverage than that person. So if you have the same coverage as the at-fault driver, then you would not be able to have what's called an underinsured claim. If your coverage is greater than that person's coverage, then you could potentially have what's called an underinsured motorist claim. And we deal with these all the time.
So how common is it for drivers on Northern Illinois roads to carry no insurance or only minimum coverage?
Well, unfortunately, there are a small percentage of the population that chooses to drive and have no coverage, or they've through the court systems, they've been suspended and they can't get coverage and they continue to drive. And then you do have, I think, a great percentage of the population that sees ads on TV for some of these low-rate car insurance companies, and they're just looking at the cheapest possible rate, and they end up having coverage that, and frankly, sometimes, and the majority of times, people don't even know, but they've been sold a policy that's a small policy, which then can create an underinsured motorist issue.
So when an at-fault driver has little or no insurance, how does someone access coverage under their own policy?
Well, you would get a hold of me, right? If you're involved in an accident that has an uninsured or an underinsured claim, first it has to be investigated to determine what it is. So right from the police report, sometimes they put down no insurance, and then you find out actually that just they couldn't find it at the scene, and they're covered by X company. So we have to investigate to determine if the person did in fact have any coverage. Once that is established, depending on your injury, the more complicated the injury, the higher dollar case you have, then that is when we determine if you have what's called an underinsured case. And it's one of the first questions I ask of my potential clients is I have them bring in their own policy with them at that time, so we can see what type of uninsured or underinsured coverage they're going to have themselves, because that's what matters. They can't go change it that day and go, they can change it going forward, but it's always about the date of the incident, right? So if someone comes in on January 1st, but their accident was December 1st, they can't change their policy on January 2nd. They give them more coverage, whatever you had on the date of the accident that matters. And so that, that's always a little bit of free advice I tell people, is that, it's so important to make sure that you have adequate protection for you and your family. And people don't realize it. Sometimes people think that having like a 100-300 policy, $100,000 per person, 300 per occurrence is enough. Well, I've had death cases where there's been a $50,000 policy, and try telling someone, that the loss of their loved one is worth $50,000. It's not easy. So it's so important for people to know and to get better coverage, even if it's moving forward, because you want to protect yourself and your family. And frankly, it's not as if going from a 100 policy to, like, let's say, doubling that policy doubles your premiums. It goes up a nominal amount. So it's so important to have enough coverage just in case you're ever going to need it.
Many people assume their own insurance company will automatically protect their interests. A lot of marketing goes around that concept. What can you say with regards to underinsured and so forth with that?
Well, really, it's all about the numbers. It's all about the numbers that you either got through your agent, if you have an agent, or you got through a rep. If you bought it on the internet, it's all about what they sold you, and that determines the coverage that you have. So it's so important for people to check, even if you're just checking it once a year, to check and see, do I have this type of coverage, right? Do I have enough medical payments coverage? And what is my underinsured or uninsured coverage that you have? Because you just can't just take whatever they offer you the first time. I think again, it's just like it's asking questions. You have to do a little bit of diligence on yourself to make sure that you have it, because their interests are to sell you a policy and to pay for their marketing campaigns, how much they care, right? And they're going to be there for you. But at the end of the day, they're only there for you on whatever they sold you. That's it.
So what types of damages can be recovered through uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage?
It's really the same as if you were involved with an at-fault driver's policy, right? Your pain and suffering, your loss of a normal life, your loss of society, your medical bills, those your lost wages. All of those elements are still available to you under a UIM or claim.
Are there specific policy limits or technical requirements that can affect how a UM or UIM claim proceeds?
Yes, the policy limits, again, will be dictated by the policy you purchased. If you have a UIM case and you receive money from the at-fault policy, the policy may say that there's a credit given for that dollar amount. So the language of the policy matters because it truly is a contract, right? So that definitely plays a role in that. As far as what you have to do, you have to give written notification to your carrier that you have a UM case or that you have a UIM case. And then in the settling of a UIM case, you have very specific rules you have to follow before you accept the money from the first policy, right? Because they have to be given some rights, whether they're going to pursue that claim and go after that person themselves. So there are some specific items that you have to do. So they're a little bit more technical on our end that we do on behalf, obviously, of our clients with respect to our communication with your carrier to make sure that we follow all of the rules that they've set out, so we can still pursue the entire policy.
So how does the process differ between negotiating a UM or UIM case claim and filing a lawsuit against an at-fault driver?
Well, with respect to the filing the suit, if it's a UM case, we normally don't do that. Again, your insurance carrier can file what's called a subrogation case and try to reclaim what they've paid to you. And same with the UIM case. A UIM case, you settled the case, or if maybe you had to sue the first at-fault driver. But when it comes to UIM case, most policies don't allow you to sue your insurance company directly. So most of the time, it proceeds in a different format. Instead of going to the courthouse and possibly ending up with a jury trial, it goes to something called arbitration, whereas I, on behalf of my client, would appoint an arbitrator. The defense would appoint one, and then they normally appoint what's called a neutral. So there's normally your case proceeds in front of a panel of 3 lawyers, one for each side, and then a neutral. So that takes out the jury posturing of it. So sometimes it can go slower, sometimes it can go quicker. It just depends on who gets picked in the companies. Now, I recently had a case, a UIM case, where a particular policy did not have an arbitration clause in there. So we actually had to file what's called a declaratory judgment action against the insurance company directly. So I have a case pending, just like a regular case, my client versus X insurance company, which is a pretty good position to be in, right? Because the jurors now would know that I'm suing an insurance company, which is a good thing. So, but the process so far is the same. Depositions are taken. They're just called sworn statements. The medical discovery is very, very similar. The doctors are still deposed to find out what they know and what they did, and what the outcome is going to look like. So they just proceed a little bit differently. I mean, as a rule, normally a UIM case is quicker, and also instead of having to convince 12 people, I'm convincing 3, right? And they're lawyers, so they get it a little bit easier. They're normally lawyers that are seasoned in this type of work, so they've done this kind of work before.
Can you briefly share an example where uninsured or underinsured coverage made a significant difference in the outcome of a case?
Sure. Um, I have a wrongful death case pending right now, in which the at-fault driver had a small limit. She was, a teenage girl, and was on her parents' policy, and it was a smaller policy. Um, there are significant injuries in the case, and it just so happened that the car my client was a passenger in happened to have $1 million policy. So there's a lot more coverage now that's available to the injured parties because there was good UIM coverage. So it's a game changer in the net outcome to clients when they're either involved in a case where they themselves have a large uh, underinsured motorist coverage, or they're a passenger in a car that has good coverage. So yes, it can make a significant. It's still the same injury, right? The injuries are the same. It's just, are you going to be properly compensated? And in this case, if we just had the first policy, there would not be proper compensation. But because we have this larger UIM case available to us, there is better, much better coverage available.
Excellent. Well, as we wrap up today, what steps should somebody take immediately after an accident to protect a potential uninsured or underinsured motorist claim?
I still think if you're in a significant collision, obviously get into a safe environment and get the proper medical treatment. Um, I think the next important thing is to contact someone like us, a law firm that does this type of work, as soon as you possibly can. Right? We'll be the ones that will be able to really determine if the police report says there's no insurance to verify whether you really have a UM case or not, and then down the road whether or not you have a UIM case or not. And we'll be there to answer those questions and to put the proper parties on notice of any claim that you have.
Uninsured and underinsured coverage is something many people don't think about until they need it. But by then, the details really matter. If you've been involved in an accident in Northern Illinois and have questions about uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, you can contact Clark Frost Zuki for a free consultation at clarkfrost.com. Thank you for listening to Call Frost First, Illinois Injury Law. If this episode was helpful, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who may need it. Thanks for your time today, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.